Hi YouTube. I am sitting here on my floor by my plants and half of my books with some Christmas music that hopefully YouTube doesn't pick up to kind of just go through the books I've read this year. I know it's early December when I'm filming this, but I'm only 3 books away from hitting my Goodreads goal, so I have no doubt that I will be able to do that. So I've read 74 out of my 77 books so far this year, and I'm in the middle of 2. I'm currently reading We the Living by Ayn Rand and All the Light We Cannot See by, what's right up there? I can't read his name from here. And I have a whole stack of books I want to read soon, and I'll probably come up with a winter TBR here soon. But I kind of just want to go through my little list of the books I've read and just talk about some of my favorites. In no particular order, not a particular amount of them. Start at the beginning. Oh, I started off the year on a high note. I reread The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson and finished off the trilogy for the City of Brass with The Empire of Gold, which that was a great trilogy about. It was a high fantasy series that was based off of folklore and mythology from Northern Africa, the Middle East, and like a little bit of Southeast Asia. And I had never read anything like that before, and it was super fun to read. And we're gonna get some ads that I'm gonna hopefully skip through. We're gonna just rock and roll here in a second. Woohoo! Both of those were great starts to the year. A good old favorite and like a really satisfying end to a series. I read and sobbed aggressively to crying in H Mart shortly after that. And that was just like, it was a heartbreaking story about like watching a family member who you may not have had the best relationship with, like, die to a horrible, destructive disease. So obviously check out the trigger warnings for yourself before you go read one of those things, or before you go read it. But it is a really beautiful story, and it does talk about like the importance of food for like family and love, and I really enjoyed it. I'm just definitely scrolling up in my Goodreads. I read a few. I listened to the audiobook for Breeding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, I believe. Kimmerer. I really liked that. She is both a Indigenous Native American and a like multi-PhD professor who got degrees in various kinds of botany and ecology, and her entire methodology and purpose is to bring people back to the nature that sustains them, because we are not currently in a state of sustaining the nature around us, and therefore the nature around us is dying and will in the near future possibly will not be able to sustain us. And she breaks it up into different sections and goes through different of the folk tales that she was raised on and her Indigenous upbringing, and like how she's applied them to her teaching and to her kids and to her life, and she does get technical and in the weeds, you could say, which is almost a pun, but it was a really good, very important story to read. I read a lot of books this year. One of my favorite like books I read this summer was actually called The Summer Book by, I can't really read this, stand by, Tove Jansson. It was a heartwarming tale of like a multi-generational experience, living on an island, I believe off the coast of Norway or Sweden, and it was told through like the grandmother and the like young granddaughters, just the way they interacted with each other and the way they grew together and apart and older as like a unit. And it was just like, it was mostly a heartwarming tale, and it was just like a very summery read. However, the summer off the coast of one of the Nordic countries. It's very different than the summer I was experiencing in Texas. So it was like, a few of the tales were like, oh, it was brisk this morning. I'm like, oh, it was 110 degrees this morning. So that was kind of funny to kind of compare to my own experience of summer. I lost my place. Sorry, everybody. I read A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway while I was traveling on vacation, and this entire vacation was kind of, I visited my hometown where I was from, where I hadn't been in a long time, and it has a very distinct like food environment, a very distinct culinary experience, you could say. And I kind of just read this book, A Movable Feast, at all of the different restaurants I went to, because I haven't had food like this in a long time, and I just ate as much of it as I could, like all day, every single day. So at every restaurant I was at, I was reading a little bit of this book because I was traveling by myself, and it was very fun to kind of just read about like Ernest Hemingway kind of doing the same thing and just like experiencing the people around him, because Fitzgerald pops in a few times and like he interacts with other people some people would probably recognize the names of, but it's mostly like him going to restaurants and like experiencing the world around him, and it was very much what I was doing for that like little trip. So that was, I think, like a really cool way to read that book. What did I read next? Oh, the next books that I read that I really, really loved was Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. It was one of the secret novels from Brandon Sanderson's Experience. Also, cheers break, because I was thirsty. It was one of the secret novels from the year of the Fear of Four novels or whatever. I really, really enjoyed it. It was so incredibly written, and I loved the story, and I wasn't sure where it was going to go, and it had me all over the place, and I was super invested. And I haven't really been as invested in one of his books recently. To be fair, none of the really big series ones have come out in a while. So that was a delightful thing to read. I loved that one a lot. And immediately following that, without sleeping, I essentially read I forgot the name of the trilogy, but The Deadly Education, Last Graduate, and Golden Enclaves. That is a magic school done right. It was such a good book. Also, the lighting is really bad in here. I just noticed that. It's okay. Y'all are gonna get this video anyways. That book series was so good, and it was so fun to read, and I finished I think it might be YA or like in between YA and adult fantasy. I'm not entirely sure. But it was a magic school. It was done right. It was just a beautifully written story, and the characters were fun and spunky, and you follow like this one, I believe you mostly follow this one female magician student, wizard. I'm not entirely sure what they're called in this universe. It's been a minute. And she's like kind of a loner, and then because she's not because she's too powerful, but because she like could be too powerful, and there's been like prophecies of her destroying the world, but turns out she's gonna save everybody and redo everything, and spoiler alert, it's awesome. So I definitely recommend reading those. What's next? I read a lot of books recently, but none of them are necessarily super exceptional. I just did tonight finish rereading Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I want to read the new one, the prequel that has just come out, and I spent a lot more time with it this time around because the first time I read it, I opened it and didn't stop reading it till I was done with it. We're gonna ignore the ads. And I just wanted to like be cozy and enjoy the experience. So I had a great time rereading it, and I think that's a good way to wrap up this little Casey's year in books. Let me know what are some of the best book or most impactful books you read this year. 'Cause I read a lot of other books. Honorable mentions in no order: Tress of the Emerald Sea Babel, All Systems Red, Persepolis 1 and 2, Adventures of Amina Al-Sharafi, The Woman Destroyed, Witch of Wild Things, The Dead Romantics, and The Friday Night Club. Those are my honorable mentions. My least favorite book this year was probably The Assassin's Apprentice, and I know all the fantasy people out there will probably disown me for that comment, but I really didn't like it. I definitely was listening to the audiobook, so I feel like that might have contributed to my experience, but like the book didn't really do it for me. I had a bad time with it, didn't finish it. And on that note, I'm excited to read a bunch more books next year. I had a goal to finish some series and to read some more classics, and I did a very small amount of both of those goals, so they're going to continue into the next year, but I'll probably mention my loose goals for the next year in the winter TBR video that I'm excited to put up for y'all. I will also upcoming probably do a bookshelf tour if y'all will be into that, so let me know. Happy 2023 in books, everybody. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, happy whatever you celebrate, and most importantly, happy reading.